Ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to bring to the stage this moment, Vanessa Boyd.
Okay, hello everybody. I am Vanessa Boyd, and I'm a boiler room girl. My official title is high pressure boiler operator. I have been licensed and working in the city of Detroit and in Dearborn for over 30 years. When I was really young, my dad and granddad were in the same field. My dad worked for the city of Detroit. My granddad worked for the railroad company. But neither one of them could get their license because of their race. So when I got my license, I had never seen my dad that animated. He's like one of these really laid back guys, just really laid back. But he practically danced through the house, and I didn't know what was going on. I would later find out that when I got my license, not only did I validate me, I validated him, and I validated my granddad. And I was very proud of that, very proud of that. The way I got into this field is years ago. The Board of Education was offering a stationary engineering training program through a local engineers union. And I was excited about it. I wanted to be in it. It would be a new something for me. Although my dad, let me be honest, told me, Vanessa, they're not gonna want you. And I was 21 at the time, so you kind of lively and you think the world, I'm going out here and I'm gonna do this. And I would tell him, oh no, Dad, they're gonna want me. I'm gonna learn everything. I'm gonna be a real good worker, and they're gonna want me there. Although his words rang true, I still would not be deterred. The program was a 2-year program where you went to school for 4 hours out of the day, and then you worked for 8 hours every night. You couldn't miss class, you couldn't miss work, you had to keep your grades up. At the end of the 2-year program, you had to get your high pressure boiler operator's license. So when I started out, there were 3 women, there were 400 men. One of the women came in and she said, you know what, I'm not worried about this. I'm gonna come up in here and have me a little skirt on and some heels and some stockings, and I'm not worried about passing class or doing my job. I'm gonna get mine done. The other woman was related to one of our bosses. I didn't have any relation there, but I had a strong desire to be there, and I was willing to buckle down and do the work. Those other 2 women dropped out of the program within a year. I continued on, and in a year's time, instead of 2, I went and got my high pressure boiler operator's license. But let me tell you something. Being a boiler room girl was a dangerous thing. So let me tell you this, let alone the equipment. If you don't know what you are doing, boilers can explode. And if they explode, they tear out gas lines and steam lines, and lives are in your hands. And I knew the levity of it, and I wanted to learn what I was doing. I was willing to buckle down, and I did. But what I was not prepared for was how dangerous my coworkers would be to me. I wasn't prepared for that. Because here's what you gotta know. When I started over 30 years ago, boiler rooms back then, they were either in the basement, the sub-basement, out in a field, under the ground, and you could be working with anywhere from 2 to 9 people at the same time. And you had to trust those people that you worked with. But the people that you worked with were the ones that were threatening you. So every day, and let me be clear, every day, I would walk in to threats of violence, bodily harm, rape, humiliation, sexual harassment, and the very people that you had to voice your complaint to had one time worked with you, and they had been your offenders. So that when you called them for help, they wanted you to tell them your story in detail. What did he say to you? And you sit there and you're telling your story, and then, hold on. Bob, come listen to what she's saying. So now, you're trying to tell that I need some help, and I need some protection. But they are sitting there, let me be clear, getting off on your story. And you had no protection. So if you were going to be a boiler room girl, you had to be tough. So let me tell you how my mom raised me. She said, Vanessa, if they raise a hand at you, make them draw back a nub. Okay? I was in the field 2 years when an engineer put his hands on me. It was in the bright light of day in front of 4 other co-workers who were as close to me as you are. Neither one of them who intervened, and all of them swore they saw absolutely nothing. So I had to defend myself. And when it was over, I got suspended and had to turn around and defend my job. Because as a boiler room girl, what? You got into it with an engineer? We do not stand for violence. Now let me tell you about these 2 years. I told you from day one, I was threatened with bodily harm every single day, okay? And I got no release, no recourse, none whatsoever. And the moment I defended myself, I had to fight for my job. It would be 10 years before another woman was sent to work with me. By then, the numbers had swollen to 40 women, 500 men. So since we never worked with each other, we didn't know anything about each other except what we had heard. So we were grouped into 3 categories. You were either a slut, a dyke, or a troublemaker. Troublemaker right here, okay? You ain't putting your hands on me. All right? So, when Diane first came to work with me, she walked in the door and she said, listen, I don't want none of your stuff. I heard all about you. You're a troublemaker. I don't want to be involved in that. I just come here to work. She must have thought I was crazy because all along while she's talking and fussing, I'm sitting there like, oh, and then when she got through, she said, hey, what's wrong with you? I'm so happy to see you. Because I knew this. No matter what she heard, that at some level she had experienced the same kinds of things that I had experienced. And then she would get to know me, and we would be friends. And friends we were. To this day, Diane is my BFF, okay? Diane called me from home one day. She said, Vanessa, turn on channel 56. They're talking about boiler room girls. I ran to the TV. I was like, boiler room girls, because we had only heard it in the boiler room. Here are these politicians who are talking about this party that they threw for Ted Kennedy. And this one stands up there. He said, and my job was to go out and get some boiler room girls. We got quiet when he got through explaining. Boiler room girls was code for whores. She got really quiet on that phone. And then she said, Vanessa, they've been calling us whores for 10 years. I remember it took a while for me to say anything because of all the emotions that was going through me. First, I was kind of confused. Then I got upset. And I got mad. And then I resolved, yep, I'm a boiler room girl, and I ain't no hoe. We got a female superintendent, and we were really, really, really happy because we thought somebody's gonna hear us and they're gonna understand and they're not gonna be looking at us crazy while we're trying to tell you what we are experiencing in these basements, sub-basements, out in the middle of the field, in this men's area by ourselves. Somebody's gonna understand. If we tell it to another woman, certainly she will know, right? If you've never been in the basement, in an environment where you are not supposed to go, you don't know what that's like. You don't know how the character changes. You don't know what that environment is like. You don't know how threatening it can be. You don't know how degrading it can be. You don't know it. And so to this day even, there are women, we could say it, but if you haven't been there, let me say this. Apple Water said, only those who were in the fire knows what it feels like being burned. And I held to that because then I can let go and understand why you wouldn't understand and why she did not understand. And so she kind of dismissed it. And she was like, you girls just need to learn how to say no. I went back to Diane and I said, we're going to have to rescue ourselves. I couldn't reach out to the other women because I had been branded the troublemaker, and they just didn't trust me. Because for years they had heard, oh yeah, Vanessa's the troublemaker, and if you hang around her, you could lose your job. And so they didn't. So I had to go through Diane. I had to get us together because now we need a sexual harassment policy. There has to be some consequences for what is happening to us. What I was not prepared for was when the women got together in the room and there had actually been some that had been raped in the boiler rooms and beat up in the boiler rooms. And at that point, I was determined we could get a sexual harassment policy. I started putting flyers together. I wrote on these flyers, women are getting beat and raped in boiler rooms, and nothing is being done to those offenders. We need a sexual harassment policy. We need your help. I got my little nieces and nephews together. They were really young at the time. They didn't know what all of it was about, but they knew, Auntie Vanessa, we're going to put out flyers with you. We went to the school center building. We stood on Woodward and Warren. We handed out flyers everywhere. Within an hour, I get a call from one of my brothers who worked at the Mustersky plant. which is way over in Southwest Detroit. He said, I'm holding a flyer and they're calling us into the meeting. They want to make sure that their policy is together. Now this is the city. So at this point, I am really ready for this. We get to go to this board meeting and make these things known so everybody will know it will not be held quiet in the boiler room anymore. We will not stand around and take it anymore. We will have a policy. No, you cannot put your hands on me. No, you cannot rape me. No, you cannot beat me. We will stand up together. I started getting calls from different people. I got a call from some of the board members who said, well, you know what, Vanessa, because I'm a troublemaker, right? If you come to that board meeting tonight, we're going to start an argument and you're going to lose your point anyway. So now I got to go back to Diane because I still can't really talk to these women. They somewhat trust me, but we're talking about years and years and years of hearing about Vanessa being a troublemaker, okay? So she goes to them. And I tell them, I will stand there with you. I will hold your hand. But you must tell it. You must tell it. And let me tell you something. Tell it they did. And then there was an outcry. And the media approached us. And they put it in the paper. And they put it on the news. What happened to me was, they started transferring me around. And I was kind of at a low point. I got transferred from school to school. I get transferred to a school. The administration and security meets me at the back door. Miss Boyd, we run a tight ship here. We don't want any of your antics. We don't have that kind of stuff in our building. We don't want your stuff, your mess, and all of that. And so I would be escorted to the boiler room by security. If I needed to come out for any reason, I had to call the main office to let them know I'm going to lunch. They would send security to escort me to the lunchroom or to my car. But I could not walk through that building alone because I was such a troublemaker. About 3 weeks after this, I get called to the main office. I had such a bad time. And I knew I just could not stop. Because we had to be protected. The principal calls me into her office and says, have a seat, Miss Boyd. And I said, I'm thinking I gotta start packing. I'm getting ready to get transferred again. And she stands in front of me. And she says, Miss Boyd, I've never been so proud of a woman in my life. I owe you a debt of gratitude. And she hands me the policy. And I had never been so proud of myself in that moment. Let me say this. I have not just survived in a field for over 30 years that did not want me from the jump. I have thrived in it. To this day, I can go into any building, bar none. Start up your equipment, train your staff, get your building compliant. You need some heat, I can do that. You need some air, I can do that. You need some repairs, I can do that. And I can stand here flat-footed, head tall, stand in front of you and say, I am a boiler room girl. So here's my 3 R's. I am resilient. I am resolute. And I am really, really honored to share my story with you.
Vanessa boy.